And then we move on to Randy Erskine, Lynn Janson, Buddy Whitten, Jack Seltzer, and you're close to with all of them.
Yeah, you're getting into my era there. When I actually started covering him, I got out of Michigan State in 1980, and 1982 was my first Michigan Open, and Buddy Whitten won it, and he won in '83 again. So obviously I got to know him, and he was another Blythefield pro. There's a Blythefield theme here. It wasn't on purpose. It just kind of works out that way. They had famous pros, and Randy Erskine, of course, was the guy who was still coming home from the tour then, and was a great player. And I met him at my first Buick Open. So it was. I meet all these people, and then Jack Seltzer was a great character. Jack Seltzer was he was kind of Michigan's own version of Dave Hill, at home, and he had gone to Florida some, but he came back and he always had a quip, and he had that incredible hole-in-one on the 9th hole at the Bear to win the Michigan Open, which was really cool. And it was not only that, that day they had put the pin in the wrong place because a bird had gone to the bathroom in the wrong spot, and they were using white spots to identify the flag placement, and the greenskeeper put it where the bird stuff was, and so that they went out and changed it really fast because they said, oh, wait a minute, that's not in the right place. That's not where it's supposed to be on the last day at the Bear. It's not in that easy spot. It's in the hard spot in the back. And so they went out and changed it, and he made a hole-in-one.
And it was on TV.
Yeah, it was on TV too. That was back when there was television going. It was amazing. Yeah, it was without ESPN's early days, and it was play of the day and the whole thing. It was great. It was big news for the Michigan Open. That was probably the Michigan Open's biggest moment.
We're live at the Bear at Grand Traverse Resort in Acme, Michigan. I'm Michael Patrick Shields with the newest father and son dynamo, Jack and John Seltzer. Just came off the course. Jack in an unfamiliar role as caddy for his son John, when Jack's usually making all the noise, having won the event in 1987.
Correct. This was fun today. It's fun for 2 days. I would have preferred to play golf, but if I'm not, love to work with John, and we had a great time. He played great yesterday. Today we had a little trouble, but it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it.
Before we go to John, let's talk back in 1987 when you did play 4 most excellent rounds. What were the circumstances about that day, and what do you remember most?
Well, what I remember most was I'd had the lead the year before every day until the last hole where Tim Matthews hit it close and won by a shot. And then the following year I led every round again. And I came into the 9th hole. I had just bogeyed 8, came into the 9th hole and ended up tied with Mark McNiff. And I made ace on 9 and then shot 32 on the back to win by 6. So that was an awful lot of fun, especially making the hole-in-one on the last day.
Talk about a momentum.
Well, Jack came from Flint, which had the great junior program there. A lot of top players out on tour, and have a number of them that are in the Michigan Golf Hall of Fame now, including Larry Mancour, who's now up in the practically the upper peninsula, the top of the mitten, and Elaine Crosby. Who else we got up from?
Oh, let's see. The Jackson area has all those, and then the Flint area has the Seltzers and Jeff Roth, and there's it goes on, and Larry Mancour obviously, and we've had these little sections, and John Lindholm, and they've all played in the Michigan Open. They just all haven't won it. But
Steve Brown, who's Golf Association of Michigan president, and he came up through that, and then he ran the Flint Junior event for a long time, and went on to the American Junior Golf Association before he came home here.
Yeah, those guys are more in your memory because you covered all those guys. But I met these guys. Lynn Janson, of course, was a Egypt Valley pro, and Greenridge before that, same club. But got to know him. I always had to write about Lynn and Buddy, and if one of them led and the other one didn't, or if the story on Tuesday when Lynn led was shorter than the story on Wednesday when Buddy led, I'd hear it from members. I'd get 50 calls. One time Lynn shoots a 63 in a charity classic event in Grand Rapids. Lynn shoots a 63. I'm supposed to write about Freddie Couples because he's been brought in. He's the big NCAA phenom, and he's on the pro tour, and he hits it a mile. He shoots 63 too, so I write all about that because I'm following him all day. I didn't even know Lynn shot 63. Oh, I went to play Egypt Valley. Oh, it was Greenridge then. I went to play Greenridge on Sunday with my father-in-law. Oh man, I had to leave. Those ladies weren't going to leave me alone. They came out of the clubhouse charging. It was not good, but Lynn has been a great friend. He's still working in the business, owns a golf course in Hastings. Tremendous player, maybe the best 100-yard player, from 100 yards, and he was incredible. Great putter, great chipper, and really, really great wedge game. And he still can teach that, and he is. And we always joked if Buddy hit the driver incredibly well and long irons really well. If we could put Buddy and Lynn together, they would have won everything. But they were competitors, but they were really friends. People thought, oh, they can't get along. They got along great, and two different personalities, great guys. And of course Randy Erskine, he could be the model of a golf professional. I mean, he's good looking. He's a great player. He's great in the shop because everybody likes him. You walk in and he goes, "Hey, if you got a game, or who do you want to play with today?" And he's always positive. He's always friendly. And then if you play with him in a pro-am, I played with him in a pro-am during the senior tour days in Grand Rapids, and he's the best pro-am partner I ever had over the legends. I've played with, Trevino and on, Lee Janson and Rocco Mediate, and Randy Erskine's the best one ever.
Terrific. I think Randy's going to like that.
I'm Jack Berry, and I'm at the Michigan Golf Hall of Fame with one of the Hall of Famers, Randy Erskine, longtime golf professional. He was a pretty good player as an amateur, too, and he's won about everything that there is to win in Michigan, and he's won it more than once. Well, you've played so well here in Michigan, winning the Michigan Open, winning the PGA Championship. What was some of those years like? I remember you were one of the first years up on the Bear that you won up there.
That was probably my most exciting win. I'd won the Michigan Open previously on the resort course, and then they opened the Bear, and I never broke 82 in my two practice rounds, and I was scared to death. I said, I'm going to miss the cut. I'd never missed a cut in Michigan at that point in any tournament, and I thought, I'm going to miss the cut. Well, we did play a Pro-Am that Sunday, I think, and I finally shot 75, but I'd been playing the back tees, which we didn't play in the tournament. So once I got used to the normal tees, and I won the tournament at 2 or 3 over par, and that was a great score back then because I think I won by 1 over Ken Allard. So to win at the Bear was very exciting. And then another thing was exciting. Jack Nicklaus wrote me a letter congratulating me, Randy, and good going at the Bear.
Hi, I'm Jack Berry, and I'm here with a young fellow that I remember from, back in the 1960s, Ken Devine, who was a longtime executive director of the Michigan section of the PGA and is well known in golf as one of the top salesmen back in the days when we had a lot more golf companies going around. Well, we're talking about a little about the 50s and the 60s, which were actually post-war, 20 years or so after the big war. Golf was really, really strong, and especially in the Detroit area and in Michigan. And we had some great players back then. We had a couple of PGA champions, as a matter of fact, Chick Harbert and Walter Berkemo.
Yeah, I mean, you go back, Jack, to Oakland Hills. At one time, I guess. What was his name? The old guy, Al Watrous. There was a great player. He used to tangle with Harbert, and he was older then, but he was still playing. I remember the first time I called on him when I was a salesman before I went into management, which was one of my biggest mistakes, by the way. Before he'd even look at my line, I had to go down and watch him hit balls on the range. So I'm sitting there in the dirt. Al Watrous.
Al Watrous? Did you have a lot of time? No one hit more balls than Al.
He wouldn't even look at the line. Actually, Tommy Cosmos, he wouldn't let Tommy look at the line until I watched him hit balls. And that was a daily venture whenever I went to call on him. So it's a bit of history. I'm glad we're doing this. It's been a long time since I've talked about this.
Back, remembering Chick, who was the longest driver of his time, Dustin Janson and Jason Day would be be in the same company with Chick, who used to drive the first hole at Meadowbrook along 8 Mile Road.
At Meadowbrook, regularly, and and he was hitting it with persimmon drivers, and it was fiber inserts. They weren't even Cyclac then, and heavy true temper shafts. So he'd be hitting it right today with these guys.
Now tell me, you're a good club man, golf clubs, the playing, the instruments. Now, how did you get into that?
Well, Chet Jaywar got me started. I was between opportunities at the time, and Chet called me one day, I guess it was a Sunday afternoon, and he says, "Ken, I'd like to get in the golf business." I said, "I'd love to get in the golf business, Chet, but I don't want to work for you, Chet." So he said, "No, there's a guy in here from the First Flight Golf Company looking for a sales rep." And I never heard of First Flight. Most people didn't hear of First Flight, but it was a step in the golf division. So I took the territory of Michigan and Northern Ohio, and then they were brave enough to promote me to district manager and then vice president of sales and marketing, and then I went to the PGA Golf Company and wrapped it all up. Well, I had, 15 years with the Michigan PGA. So we wrapped that up in 2004. But all of those years, Jack, I called on these guys we're talking about, Horton Smith. But Chick in general he used to come over every now and then to play as Horton Smith's guest. And I caddied in his foursome one day. And I could not believe how far he hit the golf ball. I mean, he was hitting it 30 yards past Horton Smith in those days. And that's with the wound ball, with the liquid center. And he'd be out there with him today. And he was colorful on the golf course.
Well, it's kind of a different era. Nowadays, club pros are at the club, whereas if they're a player with a lot of talent, as those fellows were back that were talking in the 40s and 50s, there wasn't enough money on the tour. The purses were so small. The Motor City Open started, $25,000 purse. Ben Hogan won the first one, and Kerry Middlecoff won, and Chick played in that.
Chick finished, I just looked at it today, Chick finished 35th and was out of the money. 34th got $70. $70.
It's unbelievable in today's purses with the
and then they'd all jump into their station wagons and load all the stuff in and take off driving. Yeah, Jack, that's how I got started. Chet Jaywar, and I've thought about him all my life, and he was a good, dear friend. I mean, very close. He and his wife Kathy, I loved him. So.
Well, we had that Motor City Open going for, I think it was about 12 years, 11 or 12 years, until the Buick came along with the big dollar and kind of doubled the purse size. And
yeah, well, that was almost as big as when Dick Wakefield signed a $50,000 contract, or Nicklaus signed at $40,000 with McGregor. Everybody thought they were nuts.
Well, what about the Michigan Open back in those days?
Well, my first one would have been in 1991. Okay, and it was up at Grand Traverse, and I think Michigan Bell sponsored it at that time, but I think it was Michigan Bell, and it was my first venture with the section here, and of course I didn't know many of the pros. You know the situation I was when I took it over, but yeah, I remember Steve Brady and all of these guys that were all young kids then. I see them; they're in the Hall of Fame now. Right. He's the director of golf there, which is unbelievable. So I look at these guys. But anyway, back to what you're talking about. All of the kids that would have become PGA professionals now and started working in these golf shops are playing these mini tours. So all the good players, like we used to have back in the 50s, 60s, where they used to be club professionals and then go play golf, and they were respected.
Well, back in Chick's days, Bergamo's days, they had winter jobs. Chick was down in Florida, and I think Walter was out of Palm Springs, and they got in with all the stars, with all the big names. Yeah. Yeah. So, and then get into some tournaments down in Florida, California, down in the sunspots in the wintertime.
That's right. Oh, yeah, Walter loved the stars. Oh, and he'd tell you about them, too. Senior, we used to call Walter. Well, I know my first year on the road here, we had 4 guys, and I could test my memory, but 4 guys had their Ryder Cup bags hanging up in the golf shop. So, the golf professional was a hero back in those days. Today they fold shirts a lot, but they give a lot of lessons. They keep the game going, and they're more dedicated to the game of golf than those guys were, because they were making enough money to get back on the tour. So it's a change. Everything's changed, Jack, as you know.
Well, Chick, he won, played in the Ryder Cup. He won his match. He became the captain. He won again. So that was when now the captains are always guys that come off the tour. That changed a lot. I mean, Walter Hagen was captain for about 20 years or something like that. And he was right. He basically had been a club pro, but was smart enough to get out and do a lot of exhibitions to get a good salary and get a good car and all the top clothes.